Guide to Soul, Coming Back to Yourself. Episode 7, Patterns You Inherited But Never Chose. Yep, we're talking about that. We're going there. There's a voice in your head that sounds like you, but is it? It's been there so long, you stopped questioning whether it belongs to you. It tells you to smile even when you're exhausted. It tells you that you're being too much. It tells you that your needs come last. And the wildest part, you think that it's your voice, but it's not. Welcome back, Guide to Soul. I'm Jennifer, and this is the podcast about coming back to yourself. To the parts of you that you set down along the way, somewhere along the way because they were either too inconvenient, too much, or they didn't fit the story you were trying to live. Today, we're talking about the patterns you inherited but never chose. And I want to be really clear about what I mean by this. I'm not talking about your trauma. I'm not talking about your diagnosis. I'm not talking about your behaviors. I'm talking about the automatic way you show up in the world. What you've always assumed were just you, your personality, your nature, the over-explaining, the apologizing before you've done anything wrong. Do these sound familiar? The hypervigilance, always reading the room, the adjusting yourself to make other people feel more comfortable, the people-pleasing, the perfectionism, the way you shrink yourself in certain rooms. I think we all have had these. The way you perform competence even when you're terrified. These aren't character traits. They're learned behaviors and responses. And most of the time, they were learned before you were even old enough to understand or consent to learning them. Let me give you one example so this lands in your body, not just your head, because that's really important. Over-explaining. Picture this. It's 2:14 on a Tuesday. Your boss just messaged you and asked you where the report is. And before you've even thought about a response, you're already typed out 4 sentences. Hi, so sorry. I was actually planning to send it later or this morning, but I had a call. It ran long, blah, 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 right? You're checking in. I'll double check the numbers because I noticed something, whatever, okay? This is a small child over-explaining. This is the 4-year-old. You just wrote out 4 sentences when you could have sent one that said, I'll send it by 3, right? So again, this is the small child explaining herself to her parents so she doesn't get in trouble. That's an inherited pattern. That's doing the talking there. And here's the thing. You didn't choose to type 4 sentences instead of 1. Your nervous system did. Before your conscious mind even caught up, your body had already calculated, and to make yourself smaller, to justify your existence, prevent any disapproval you were sure was coming your way, right? That's not personality traits. That's a survival system. That's a strategy. And you learned it somewhere when you were young, probably before you could even read. Let's think about this, right? I spent about 18 months doing what I call unpacking my house, right? Going room by room, metaphorically, in my inner landscape, looking at every pattern, every reaction, every way I moved through the world. And I was asking one simple question. Is this actually me? Or is this what I was taught? One of my go-to lines when I was younger, and I would say this, when I say this with deep love, it was, I have to be a good girl. Good girls don't do that. That wasn't my truth. That was the script. But I'd been running it for so long that I thought it actually was my operating system. It wasn't. It was something that I learned. I inherited this pattern when I was younger. And it felt protective at first. It felt like it was keeping me safe, but it was actually making me small, making me agreeable, being less than I might have been. I mean, it could have been the smartest survival strategy that was available to me at the time, or something if you had this, but you're nervous. My nervous system learned this. My body learned it. My whole sense of self organized around this one sentence. I didn't choose any of this. Let me say that again because I want it to land. I didn't choose it. You didn't choose it. A small child cannot consent to her conditioning. She just adapts to survive whatever room she's in. And that's exactly what I did, and maybe you did. Beautifully, brilliantly. You did what you had to do. But survival strategies aren't the same as living. And at some point, usually when you're old enough to realize you don't need these survival strategies anymore, these patterns start to feel like cages. And now, here's something I really want you to hear because I don't think it gets said enough. These patterns don't just live in your head, they live in your body. They're ingrained in your existence. When you over-explain at 2:14 on a Tuesday, that's not a thought process. That's your nervous system firing before your mind even shows up to the party. Your body has learned this years ago. That disapproval was dangerous, that taking up space was risky, and that being a good girl kept you safe. And your body remembers that, which means you cannot think your way out of these patterns. You cannot read enough books, listen to enough podcasts, or journal enough to make them go away. Because the pattern isn't in your mind, it's in your wiring. And that means the work isn't fast. Your body might not believe you the first 100 times you try to change this. It might revolt. So you might have to try different things. You'll send one sentence email and your stomach's going to drop, or you're going to say no without apologizing and your chest is going to sink and get tight. And those aren't failures. That's your nervous system catching up, right? You have to get comfortable, and that's the work. For me, the realization came slowly and then all at once. Slow, incremental moments where I catch myself mid-sentence saying something that didn't align with what I was actually thinking. Then there were moments where I'd notice I was performing instead of actually being. And then there was this one moment. I can't even pinpoint exactly what triggered it, where it was, but it all landed at once. When I realized, holy crap, I've been living someone else's life. That moment is different for everyone, I'm sure. It might come in a therapy session for some people. It might come from someone you love holding up a mirror and saying, that's not you. And that has happened to me. It might come from burnout or heartbreak or just quiet exhaustion from the effort of being someone you're not. But it comes. And I want you to know that the moment of recognition is the beginning of everything. Because once you see the pattern, you can't unsee it. And once you can't unsee it, you get to make the choice, which is huge. You get to ask, do I want to keep running the script or do I want to try something different? You have free will. For me, the answer was clear. I started to allow myself to show up differently, to say no without apologizing for it, to take up space without shrinking myself, to speak what I actually wanted, what was true for me, even if it was inconvenient for others, even if it was a lot. And here's what happened. Everything got easier. Not because my life changed, not because other people suddenly understood me better. It's because I stopped living in an incoherent way. I stopped splitting myself into the person I was and the person I thought I had to be. And when I collapsed that timeline and that gap, when I stopped being in incoherence with my own life, I started moving through the world differently, with different energy. You make different choices. You attract different people. You show up with clarity instead of confusion. You trust yourself more. I trusted myself more. And because I finally started listening to myself instead of something that I inherited, some voice in my head from my childhood. And that pattern that I inherited or you inherited, they aren't your fault. We didn't choose them. But the question now is, are you choosing to keep them? That's the big question here, because you get to unpack your house too, room by room, pattern by pattern, asking yourself, is this me or is this what I was taught? And when you find the places where those pieces don't align, when you find the inherited scripts that have been running your life, you get to rewrite it. And that's the work. That's the freedom. Before we choose or close, I want to give you something to actually do this week. Not a project, not a process, just one small practice for the week. Here it is. Catch yourself once this week. Notice one moment where you say something or do something that doesn't actually feel like you. Maybe it's the 4-sentence email when you send one sentence. Maybe it's the sorry before a perfectly reasonable request. Maybe it's the I'm fine when you're not. Don't fix it. Don't beat yourself up, and don't try to change it. Just notice it. Because noticing is everything. Noticing is the first crack of light through the door. And once you start noticing, you can't stop. That's how the whole house starts to unpack itself, one pattern at a time. And if this episode landed for you, share it with someone you love. That's how this work spreads, not through the algorithms, but through the people who know you and trust what you share with them. And to you, my love, you're exactly where you're supposed to be. Love and light, Jennifer. And I'll meet you back here next time.